When I when I began my research into these multipliers and diminishers, I really was on this mission, almost this kind of captain multiplier kind of mission, that I was going to rid the world, the corporate world, of diminishers. Because they were a problem, are they not? But, a couple years into this, I've come to realize that they're not the problem. I studied these extremes, these multipliers, these diminishers, but what I found is the real problem are those of us who are in the middle. The accidental diminisher, the good person, the nice person, the manager or leader with the best of intentions who, despite those intentions, is still having a diminishing impact, shutting down people without knowing about it. Most of the diminishers I studied had no clue of the diminishing impact they were having on their organization. Is it possible that we can do our greatest damage when we hold the very highest of expectations? And is it possible even that the more noble our intentions, the more likely we are to have a diminishing impact? This is a question I want to explore with you for the next few minutes, and I want you to join me in asking this question: how might I, with the very best of intentions, be shutting down smart, capable people around me, people I value? I want to share with you a few ways that I find this happens over and over. A number of these are things that I really struggle with. Not the least of which is this very first, the idea guy. Now, the idea guy is the person that just bounds into the office bursting with ideas. Hey, what about this? And I was out on my run and I had this thought, and I went to the REACH conference, and they've got all these ideas rumbling around their head, and they're spewing ideas. They're a fountain of ideas. And it's not that we think that our ideas are better than anyone else. We think that our ideas will do what? Inspire, spark, catalyze other ideas, right? What actually happens to those of us who are working around the idea guy? We shut down. Or we spend our time chasing ideas. Hey, that sounds pretty good. Let me do this. Okay, a website, great. A task force, okay. A survey, and pretty soon, where do we end up? Exactly back where we started. And we start to think, well, I don't need to worry my pretty little head over this, because if I need an idea, where do I go? Yeah, the idea guy. I go to the fountain because it goes off every hour, right? And I'll just grab one of those ideas and do something with it. What about the leader who's always on? Always engaged, always present, always something to say, always something to contribute. Perhaps, like maybe a few people in this room, they were blessed with the gift of gab. What happens around the always-on leader? Yeah, there's no room for anyone else because, right, well, they expanded like a gas, right? And they're taking up all the space in the meeting. And people are thinking, well, I would contribute if I could breathe, right? If there were any oxygen in the room. So they shut down other people. Well, what do we do to the always-on leader? Because they do more than shut down others. What else happens? What do you do with the human being who lacks an off switch? Yeah, you tune them out. And what do they begin to sound like? Exactly that. Is this like the Peanuts generation? Yeah, they sound, it took me till I was about 30-something to figure out that teacher was actually talking. And it was just the kids who couldn't hear anything. Yeah, they start to shut down others, but we shut down them. And we don't hear these kind of leaders. It's like they're talking and they don't know their microphone isn't on. What about the rescuer? This is the good person. This is perhaps a person who teaches Sunday school. This is the person that doesn't like to see people suffer, struggle, make mistakes, or fail. And what do we do when we see someone struggling and suffering? What does the good person, the good leader in us want to do? Rescue or help. Sometimes it's this big heroic rescue, right? Like, dun da da, I'm here to save the day. We come in on the white horse. We heroically save the day. But more often than not, it's more subtle, right? Often as a leader, we just extend a hand of help. But what happens when the leader is too helpful, too early, too often? What happens to the people around them? Yeah, they become dependent. And what do they come to believe? Yeah. What about the pace setter? This is a leader who's leading by example. Haven't we been taught this? This is a leader who says, I'm going to set the pace for quality, for agility, for innovation, for customer service. I'm going to set the pace. Other people will notice what I'm doing, and kind of because I'm the leader, they will naturally follow, right? But does it work that way? What happens when the leader gets out ahead a car length or two? Do other people speed up? They tend to hold back. Now, I've got 4 children. My youngest, he just turned 11 last week. This kid loves to run. There's nothing he loves more than to run, and he loves to race mom to the bus stop. Okay, of course he loves it. Why? He wins, of course, because I'm in good mom mode, right? And good mom mode is it's close, or he wins. But every now and then I forget, and I go into this sort of middle-aged, like, wow, this might be the last person on the planet I can still run faster than. Okay? This is it, my last glory moment. And I go speeding down to the bus stop, and I get there first, of course. Catching my breath, I turn around, and what is young Joshua doing? He's walking. It's almost a saunter. And what does he say when he catches up? Now, I want you to think like an 8-year-old. Yeah, he says, we weren't racing that time, Mom. Right? What happens when we can't keep up with the superstar or the manager who's setting the pace? More often than not, when we set the pace, we create spectators, not followers. What about the rapid responder? This is the person who's on it. This is like see a bear, shoot a bear kind of logic. This is the person who clears their inbox every 22 minutes. I'm on it, I got it. What happens, and of course their intention is that their fast decisions, their fast actions are going to keep everyone moving fast, right? Agility, flexibility. What happens around the rapid responder? Let them handle it. We all know that feeling, an email note sent to you but copied to that rapid responding boss or colleague. Heaven forbid you have to get up from your chair, go talk to a colleague, run a report, think, for heaven's sakes. And what do when you realize that she's probably already answered? You click delete. Or what about this one? This one strikes home to me, the optimist. This is the positive, can-do, sunny side kind of leader. Haven't we been told for years that leaders need to be optimistic? I mean, I've read all the research, the data, all the positive physiological benefits of optimism. But what happens when the leader sees the sunny side? What role do other people get to play? I learned this one with a sting. This one came as a hard learning lesson. For me, it was a couple years ago. I am working on a pretty complex project, a really intense piece of research and writing. And at one point in the project, my colleague says to me, he goes, Liz, I need you to stop saying that. Naturally curious, I said something brilliant like, saying what? He goes, you know that thing you say all the time. Well, I had no clue what it was I said all the time. And so it was like he'd been waiting months to give me this little speech. And he said, how hard can it be? We can do this. We've got this. We can figure it out. How hard can it be? Now I'm sensing this optimism. And what I'm explaining to him is actually that's my way of saying we're smart, we're capable, we'll figure this out, we can do it. Which I thought was particularly helpful. And he said, that is the thing I need you to stop saying. I said, why? He said, because what we're doing, Liz, is hard. And as my manager, I need you to acknowledge it. Acknowledge it, Liz. And I'm like, oh, choking it back. I'm like, you know what? What we are doing is hard. It's hard. And of course, I'm thinking, because I'm taking in the feedback, as we all would, right? I'm like, I can stop saying that. If that is diminishing to him, I can stop saying that. Because how hard can that be? Well, you know, I found out it's actually pretty hard. it's pretty hard, but I've learned to add entirely new phrases to my vocabulary. I say things now like, what we're doing is hard. They're very sophisticated phrases. It's hard. We're going to struggle. We might make mistakes and we're probably going to fail at a few things. My team loves it when they hear this from me, and I love it when they hear it because after I do enough of this, it's like they lean back and they nod their head and they said, okay, Liz, here you go. And I say, but how hard can it be? We can do this. Because they're not asking me to give up my optimism. What they're asking me to do is acknowledge the struggle, that we're learning, that we're growing. How might you, with the very best of intentions, as a leader, as a trainer, as a parent, a colleague, how might you be shutting down smart, capable people? Maybe it's one of these 6. Maybe it's something entirely different. Can you lock in one? What might be your vulnerability? And then I think we've got a polling question here. Now, we only had space for 5. The optimist is not on there. But for those of you who really identify with the optimist, we'll do another poll, right? Because sure, we'll do a poll for you, right? Can't be that hard. Okay, so why don't you choose one. Let's see where we get the vulnerability of this group. And notice nowhere on there is what some people refer to as the 6-pack, like I got them all. Where might your greatest vulnerability? Okay, what have we got here? We have we might be doing this poll the old-fashioned way. We are going to do it the old-fashioned way. Can we bring the house lights up? Okay, for those of you who find themselves a little bit as an idea guy, and you get one pick here, hands in the air. Okay, a bunch of us. I struggle with the idea guy. One of the things I've learned to do is to build a holding tank. I ask myself a single question. When I'm just about to burst with a new idea that I want to share with my colleagues, I say to myself, Liz, is this something you want people to stop what they're doing and work on? When the answer to that question is no, I put it in the holding tank. Okay, how about those of us who are always on? Okay, quite a few. It's often what we're blessed with the gift of gab, rescuers. Okay, boy, that's 1/3 of the people in the room. Pace setters, rapid responders. And see, optimists, here it is. Here's your moment. Okay, those of us who struggle. I've come to see that it's not about whether someone's a multiplier or a diminisher. It's about stringing together as many multiplier moments as possible. And I found, like you might guess, that doesn't involve doing something big. It often involves doing something quite small. And what I want to leave us with is a challenge. What could you do to experiment? As Rich talked with us this earlier, what is a small experiment you might take that would help you create more multiplier moments in your day, in your week, in your year? Let me share a few. If you are a bit of an idea guy, again, I struggle with this, you might take the Extreme Question Challenge. Now, I didn't actually invent the Extreme Question Challenge, but the Extreme Question Challenge kind of found me. It found me about a dozen years ago. I'm working at Oracle. I'm running the corporate university. There I have a pretty big job, but it's nothing compared to my job at home. Because at home, I have 3 small children, and they are ages 6, 4, and 2 years old. Now, is there anyone here in the room who's got the 6, 4, 2 combo pack? Right here. What is bedtime like at your house? Chaos. This was my experience. Chaos every night at a very predictable time. And I'm explaining to my buddy Brian at work, I'm just explaining to him, I said, Brian, I don't know that I'm actually a very good parent right now. I feel like I'm constantly telling my kids what to do. I'm barking orders. I'm like a little dictator in my own house. And he said to me, I'm completely oblivious to the fact that this was recreational complaining. He offers coaching, which I was not looking for. And he says, Liz, why don't you try asking your children questions? You know, maybe tonight you just ask them nothing but questions. And of course, my knee-jerk reaction was, impossible. You know, I can't do that because I'm going to get home about 6. I can't get them to bed till 9:30. That's 3.5 hours. That's crazy. That's ridiculous. And he said something like, I know. And it was just enough to annoy me into taking this challenge. And I decided if I'm taking this challenge, I'm actually going big with this challenge. All the way, not a single statement would come out of my mouth that night. And I did it. And dinner was interesting, and playtime after dinner was interesting. And we got to bedtime. I asked, kids, what time is it? It was like 8:30. They knew. They said it's bedtime. What happens first at bedtime? We put away our toys. Where does that go? Okay, who needs help getting their pajamas on? You know, my 2-year-old needed help. Who's going to be the first to brush their teeth? And then still my favorite question is your toothbrush wet? Because that's usually a pretty good test of did this not happen? And then it's like, what story are we going to read tonight? Who's picking the story? Who's going to read the story? And at the end of story time, I said, well, what happens after story time? And the little angel said, we say prayers, Mom. And then I asked, who's ready for bed? Me! I'm ready! You know, it's like they had waited all day for this moment to get in their beds. And they did, and they got in their beds, and they stayed in their beds, and they went to sleep. And I'm standing out in the hallway that connects their room alone with nothing to do. But to wonder, how long have they known how to do this? I mean, they seemed like little bedtime idiots last night, but yet tonight they're like geniuses. And I found that when I shifted into the mode of asking the questions, my kids knew the answers. They knew how to get themselves in bed. They knew where their backpack went. I kept this up for 3 nights as an experiment, totally unbeknownst to my husband that this was going on. About night 3, I realized, you know, perhaps the people who work for me on my management team don't really need me telling them what to do. You know, what would happen if I asked and let the people around me find the answers? It forever changed the way I led. You know, so maybe you take this extreme question challenge. And I'm not in any way suggesting you live permanently in this space, because that's creepy. But maybe you just try it once. Or maybe if you're a bit of an always-on character, maybe you take the poker chip challenge and you go into a meeting or maybe even a workshop and you say, you know what, I'm going to contribute my opinions in small but intense doses. I'm going to play fewer chips. And you play your chips sparingly at intervals and you let other people come in. Not only do other people get more heard, when you come in big and you're more heard as well. Maybe you learn to give the pen back. When you help, you have to remember to return that in accountability. Maybe you supersize someone's job and you give them a job that's a size or two too big. The way we shop for shoes for our toddlers, right? You don't buy them to fit. You buy them a couple sizes up. And what do you say when they say, but Daddy, my feet are flopping around in these shoes? You'll grow into it. Or as my friend from Australia said, he said, I just told my daughter, oh, suck it up, princess. Parenting down under, but I have had bosses who have essentially said that to me, suck it up, princess, you can do this. One of them is here in this room, Carrie Patterson, who I worked for 27 years ago. Instead of responding quickly, maybe you stop. Carrie? You know, I have to share a Carrie moment with you. I'm working for Carrie, and I'm editing what he writes. I think Carrie is a genius. He's one of my idols, and I just am honored to get to edit anything that he writes. And I get to this, like, kind of a terrible paragraph. It's this tangle of words. And I'm doing my normal editing, copy edits, and in the margin of the paper, I write the letters AWK. Standard editorial term for awkward, right? I do all my edits because I figure I can't quite figure it out. It's a mess. But Carrie, with his enormous brain, will surely be able to improve this, right? I take it, I leave it on his desk. He comes back for lunch. And I know he's coming back from lunch because he's coming for me, you know? And he's marching down the hall to my office where he walks in, takes this document, drops it on my desk, and says, "Don't you ever give me an AWK without an FIX." And then with that little twinkle in his eye, and I'm shaking like this. But it was one of the great professional lessons of my career. What he's saying is, you know what? Supersize it, girl. You know what? Suck it up, princess. You can figure this out. Do your job. He gave the pen back to me. And I've shared that lesson with a lot of people who have worked on my teams. Maybe if you're a bit of an optimist, you create a safe place for people to make mistakes. Let me leave you with one final image. And you might recognize this image. This is from Man on Wire. If we could get this slide up on the screen. This is Philippe Petit, this crazy French tightrope artist who quite famously strung this cable between the then standing World Trade Towers back in the 70s. And 1,500 feet in the air, 150 feet across. But the image I like is not him out on this wire. The image I like is this one here where he's taking a single step. And he described his first step, where he stood there on this cable attached to the building. He said, I had one foot on the cable attached to the building, the other foot on the cable out over this expanse, and I have all my weight on my back foot. And he said, I had to make a decision. Do I shift my weight? And he said, something called me out on that cable, and of course it wouldn't call you or me. But it spoke to him, and he said, I just shifted my weight. That's all. And with his weight on the front foot, the rest was easy. He was out there on this cable for like 40 minutes. It was play. It was easy. The hard part was the shift. You know, what shift might you make? What small shift of weight would allow you to be more of a multiplier, to have more of these multiplier moments? When you shift your weight, it invites other people to shift their weight, and that's where we truly get the multiplier effect inside our organizations. Thank you.